operator, Mas Bimo atau Mas Mosi, apakah sudah siap lagu Indonesia Raya dan Mars UST? Mas Mosi, sudah siap lagu Indonesia Raya dan Mars? Oke, thank you. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, kita akan mulai sebentar lagi acara kita pada kesempatan pagi hari ini. Sambil menunggu Bapak Ibu lain yang belum hadir, kurang lebih masih ada 2 menit, 3 menit ke depan. In 5 minutes, we are about to start our program. Silahkan Bapak dan Ibu nanti untuk teman-teman yang akan bergabung bisa diberikan linknya supaya segera bergabung. Acara ini juga disaksikan secara live streaming. Nanti Bapak dan Ibu juga bisa masuk ke YouTube UST Official. Kalau ada kendala misalnya tidak bisa mengikuti langsung dengan Zoom meeting, namun kami berharap Bapak Ibu bisa bergabung melalui Zoom meeting supaya nanti lebih efektif dan maksimal mengikuti program hari ini. Mas Mosi minta tolong dibantu share nanti alamat YouTube yang live streaming untuk antisipasi jika ada Bapak dan Ibu yang di tengah perjalanan terkendala dengan koneksi yang turun. Makasih Mas Mosi. Saya menunggu ini ACC dari Bu Yun, jam berapa kita akan mulai.
Pak Nanang, cek.
Iya, Bu Yun.
Pak Imam is already here. Am I right?
Ya, I'm looking for Pak Imam ya, Bu. di Zoom meeting. Karena sudah 100 lebih yang hadir, jadi mungkin ada di bawah beliau. Pak Imam?
Pak Imam, cek.
Kayak gini aja. Mainnya gimana? Mainnya gimana?
Selamat pagi, Pak Imam.
Imam, Juli ya. Ikisan.
Hello everyone online.
Nggih,
How are you?
Pak.
How's everyone?
Nggih. Matur nuwun Pak Imam.
Kenjang Brothers.
Bapak dan Ibu, in 2 minutes we are about to start our program. Just a few reminders. I would like to seek your cooperation in completing this seminar. Please mute or turn off your microphones when the speakers are presenting their discussion to avoid unnecessary noise. And then we would like also to request all participants to fill out the online form for the issuance of certificate of participation. We will show you the link in the question and answer session. Mohon berkenan Bapak dan Ibu nanti ketika masuk dimatikan speakernya, dimatikan mic-nya supaya tidak ada suara yang masuk di Zoom meeting itu sehingga nanti kita bisa mengikuti acara dengan baik. Apakah bisa kita mulai Bapak dan Ibu semuanya?
Biar ini Pak Anang.
Oke. Terima kasih banyak Pak Imam. Thank you very much Pak Imam, Bapak dan Ibu semuanya. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, salam dan bahagia. Before starting our today's seminar, I would like to give you a few reminders. I would like to seek your cooperation in completing the seminar. Please mute or turn off your microphones when the speakers are presenting their discussions to avoid unnecessary noise. And secondly, we would like also to request all participants to fill out the online form for the issuance of certificate of participation. We will show you the link in the question and answer sessions. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, mohon berkenan untuk mematikan mic-nya supaya tidak ada gangguan suara yang masuk. Kemudian yang berikutnya, kemudian nanti mengisi presensi supaya bisa mendapatkan sertifikat kehadiran. And I would like also to acknowledge the presence of our guest speaker, Professor Desmond Kohel from RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. Good morning, Prof. Des.
Good morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to our respected rector of UST, vice rectors, and all the staff members of UST, and also precious students. We appreciate you taking your time off your busy schedules to join us today. We hope you will learn a lot today. We have lined up for you to be fruitful and engaging. It is with privilege to acknowledge our speaker from RMIT, Professor Desmond Kohel. Ladies and gentlemen, the objectives of this webinar are to provide insights and understanding of the main topic regarding the implementation of Ki Hajar Dewantara philosophy. I'm Nanang Bagus Bekti, will be your host for about 2 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, on this occasion, let me deliver the structure of the event today as follows. First, opening, followed by prayer, and then songs of Indonesia Raya and March of UST. The third is the speech from the rector of UST, and speech will be delivered by Bapak Dr. Imam Ghazali on behalf of the rector of UST. And the third is the seminar from Professor Desmond Kohel, the theme Realizing Ki Hajar Dewantara Philosophy, Hamemayu Hayuning Bawana, Through Human Fraternity and Positive Peace. And the fourth is the question and answer session. And the fifth is closing. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, ladies and gentlemen, we are starting a new day full of motivation and positivity. Before we proceed, we will offer our prayer to God and then perform the national anthem as a token of respect to our motherland and also the songs of UST, that is March of UST. Ladies and gentlemen, let's open this event with a prayer. Bapak dan Ibu, mari kita mulai dengan berdoa. Berdoa kita mulai. Amin. Thank you. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, kita akan mendengarkan lagu Indonesia Raya. Let's perform the national anthem of Indonesia Raya as a token of respect to our motherland, followed by March of UST. Operator, screen and time are yours. Mohon bantuan operator untuk membantu lagu Indonesia Raya dan March UST.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah darahku.
Mohon maaf Mas Mosi, kita tidak bisa mendengar suara dari
Aku berdiri jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah
Mas Mosi minta tolong dicek suaranya dulu, bisa kita dengarkan.
Indonesia bersatu.
Mas Mosi, we can hear the sound from the video.
Suara tidak terdengar, Mas Nanang.
Iya, Bapak. Ini kita menunggu Mas Mosi. Bagaimana Mas Mosi? Diulang lagi.
Indonesia tanah airku, tanah tumpah
Recording in progress.
darahku. Di sanalah aku berdiri jadi pandu ibuku. Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita berseru Indonesia
Thank you very much, Mas Mosi. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, ladies and gentlemen, the next agenda is speech. And the speech will be delivered by Dr. Imam Ghazali, Vice Rector 1 on behalf of the Rector of UST. To Dr. Imam Ghazali, time and screen are yours.
Thank you, Pak Nanang. Bapak Ibu, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi semua dan selalu bahagia. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The Honorable Professor Dr. Desmond Cahill, who will be the main speaker for today's seminar or webinar. To Director of UST, Professor Dr. Arji Padimin, PhD, MPD, PhD. The other vice rectors, who Pak Wit and Sobuyun, and to the Honorable Dean and Director of the Graduate School of Education, all the head of department, and also all the family members of the UST, and all who joined this webinar. Thanks God that UST got the privilege of attending the special speech from Professor Dr. Desmond Cahill. The topic is very special, and usually we discuss this topic, Hamemayu, Hayuning, Bawana, in Indonesia, and with the perspective of the local Indonesia. But today we are having a privilege of discussing this in terms of international perspective. And as one of the expertise of Professor Dr. Desmond Cahill is about multiculturalism. So it is a very best opportunity for us to understand and to learn from Prof. Cahill about these matters. We do hope that we could take the best opportunity to learn, to understand, in order that we could putting this into to materialize this, not only realizing but to materialize this not only into our everyday practice of educating the students. And we, as behalf of the family of UST, we express our thanks to Professor Dr. Desmond Cahill, who is willing to share his expertise to us in this opportunity. And we are so happy to hear that last night we came to an agreement that he is also available to provide or to give a series of several lectures to us, and also will help us in terms of building or holding activities to improve the quality of the UST's education. We do hope that this activities will also help us to be more knowledgeable in our perspective, and also to speed us to achieve the mission of the UST, which is becoming recognizable institutions in the South Asia. So this must be the first step in order to make our motto, which is Tamansiswa's teaching, into international level. Thank you very much, and thank you for Yun and the staff who have worked hard to make this event possible, without which we will not meet this Sunday morning with Prof. Cahill. Again, thanks a lot for all your participations, and make sure that if you have anything to ask, Prof. Cahill will be very happy to answer all your questions. Thank you very much, and let's open this webinar by starting Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you very much and enjoy the seminar with Prof. Bahil. Thank you, Prof. Bahil. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pak Imam, for the very warm welcome remark, and the seminar has been officially opened by Bapak Dr. Imam Ghazali. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, ladies and gentlemen, now we come into the main point, that is the seminar for Professor Desmond. The theme is realizing Ki Hajar Dewantara philosophy, Hamemayu Hayuning Bawana, through human fraternity and positive peace. Let me acknowledge our moderator, Ibu Yuyun Julia, PhD. To Ibu Yuyun Julia, PhD, time and screen are yours.
Well, check first. Can you listen to my voice, please?
Clear.
That's good. All right. This Sunday morning, this is a very good time because we have our special guest, keynote speaker, the only one, and he is Deskal. We usually call him Des. And thank you very much again for your coming and also for your enlightenment to discuss the issue. I think this one is very connected with KHD philosophy. That is what we call by Hamemayu Hayuning Bawana. Sorry if my Japanese pronunciation is not very good. Through human fraternity and positive peace. This is really connected, everyone. I mean, his expertise, Des' expertise, as well as Tamansiswa with the phrase Hamemayu Hayuning Bawana, they are connected. And then just for your information, and also Prof. Deskal, that the participants already touches 275. And I think it is going again, improving or increasing in the next minute. Beforehand, Ibu Bapak, I would like to have a very short biography about Des. Okay. Des is an emeritus professor from Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, Melbourne, Australia. He began research and teacher career in 1977, covering immigrant, the topic is about immigrant, cross-cultural, multicultural, and interfaith issues, as well as second language education studies. Including in this case is ESL, EFL, and also languages other than English, education, language maintenance, and as well as language shift. Another one, his interest goes to also world population movements, including, for example, contract workers, international students, intermarriages, and if I'm mistaken also, please correct me if I'm wrong, that you already supervised, let's say, about 19 PhD, more.
25.
Oh, 25, sorry. 25 PhD completions, and in Jogja, actually there are 4, from Universitas Sarjanawiyata Tamansiswa 2, and then from University of Ahmad Dahlan, as well as Universitas Muhammadiyah Yogyakarta. So again, he is so special to us. And then Des has been chair religions for peace rally since 2001. And at the recent 9th Asian Conference of Religions for Peace General Assembly, Des was elected moderator of the ASEAN Conference of Religions for Peace and named by the 22 member nations present. So without further ado, I think later on we'll show you what we are talking about this morning. And hello, Prof. Des, are you good? Fine?
Thank you, Yun, and it's my pleasure to be back in Jogjakarta, to be with my friends, particularly here at Tamansiswa University. I bring you the greetings of Australia to the people of Indonesia. And I want to point out, before we deal with the substance of this webinar, that there are two links between the Australia and Indonesia that I want to focus on. One is that from about 600 or 700 years ago, the fishermen from Makassar used to go down to Australia, to the northern part, and there they would stay for about 3 months every year, catching trepang, or sea slug in English. And it's very clear from the stories of the Aborigines in Northern Australia that these fishermen practiced their Islamic faith in the presence of the Aborigines. And what this means is that Islam was practiced in Australia before Christianity by these Makassar fishermen. The second point is very up to date. We are just getting figures from the 2021 census of Australia, and we find that almost 100,000 Indonesian-born people in Australia. Now, that's a lot of people. In fact, it's the 20th largest immigrant community in Australia, which is a migration state. And 57% of those Indonesian-born people are women. And this means that there are many Indonesian women who have married Australian men and then gone to the various parts of Australia, particularly Sydney and Melbourne. Another interesting fact is that Islam is not the biggest religion in that 100,000. In fact, it's Catholics, and closely followed by Muslims in the profile. So that's an interesting item of information. So our two nations are neighbors, and we need to build up our relationship as best we can, and this is one good example. Well, let us now turn to my presentation, which is about human fraternity and positive peace in a world of global chaos. And we don't have to be reminded too much about the chaos that we are in. We've come out, or are coming out, of a pandemic that's affected every country in the world. We now have wars in different parts of the world, particularly Russia's invasion of the Ukraine, and what that is doing to global food supplies, particularly in Africa, and also to global energy affairs, and how that's impacting upon a variety of countries across the world. Now, this presentation is about, first of all, the message of Hiroshima in a world of nuclear challenge. Then I want to talk about Religions for Peace Asia, of which I am now the moderator, succeeding Professor Din Syamsuddin from Muhammadiyah, whom many of you will know. And then the 5 conditions for interfaith engagement that that when religions come together in dialogue and engagements, for that to be successful, I want to talk about the 5 conditions. Then we'll look at the concept of human fraternity, and finally, positive peace. In early August, on August the 6th, I was in Hiroshima for the 77th commemoration of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. And we were gathered there, and we were seated by the time, excuse me, of 8:15 in the morning when the bomb was dropped. And later on in the ceremony, Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, said that all nuclear weapons are rubbish. The day before, I had gone to the Hiroshima Memorial Museum. And when you walk into the museum, there is a photograph of this little girl on the left. She was 10 years of age when the bomb was dropped and 1.2 kilometers from the epicenter. And you can see how she's covered in wounds and burns and so on. It's a pathetic picture taken 3 days after the bomb was dropped. And the photograph beside her is of the same person, Yukiko Fuji. And she was, finally, she grew up, got married, had 2 children. And then in 1977, at the age of 42, she died from radiation cancer. As so many of those who did not die immediately after the dropping of the bomb, but many years later, and there are still people who are dying from the effects of that. The average age of the victims is now 84. Now, at the ceremony, which Mr. Guterres was, but also the Japanese Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, who comes from Hiroshima. He's the member in parliament for Hiroshima, and some of his relatives died in 1945. Towards the end of the ceremony, 2 children in grade 6, about 11 years of age, a girl and a boy, stepped forth to give a commitment to peace from the children of Hiroshima. I'll now read this. It's not all on the screen, but you can listen. 8:15 a.m. on August the 6th, 1945. Corpses lie in the streets. They choke the rivers. Voices beg for water, plead for water. The people you care about vanish in an instant, and the life you know, the future you imagined, are suddenly pulled away from you. We cannot change what happened in the past. We can, however, create the future, accepting their grief. The victims stood up and created a peaceful Hiroshima for us. Now it is our turn. So we solemnly swear to take action for the creation of a future where peace is reflected in the eyes of everyone around the world. Now, I had Religions for Peace Asia, and my predecessor, as I've already noted, was Professor Din Sayamsuda from Indonesia. It is the world's largest interfaith organization with its headquarters in New York, and it works closely with the United Nations. It was founded in 1970 by 6 religious leaders from Asia and the US. Some from Japan, from the US, and then there was an Indian Catholic archbishop. And what they wanted to do was to bring to the attention of the world what had happened at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And they wanted the world to know that the various religious and faith communities, Islam, Christianity, Buddhist, Hindu, Sikh, and so on, all the other religions, are united in wanting peace, freedom from nuclear weapons, and then to work for social cohesion in each individual nation, like Australia or Indonesia. So I now want to reflect on 2 key themes. But before I do that, I want to reflect on the 5 conditions for interfaith engagement. This is, I think, fundamental to the work of Religions for Peace, where we seek dialogue and engagement with other religious groups. And there are 5 constructive conditions for such engagement. The first is what we call epistemic humility. Now, epistemic humility, the word epistemic means the philosophy of thinking. That in the way that we think when we approach faiths other than our own, we must recognize and have the humility that there is the very possibility of change or growth within our own particular religious tradition. We must be humble enough to know that. And it's a key strategy in countering passive and very assertive forms of extremism and fundamentalism. The second condition is that we have commitment, that constructive dialogue and engagement cannot take place unless one is committed to one's own particular tradition. In my case, that is being Catholic, a Catholic Christian. Because when we go into this engagement, we are speaking for our faith. And so this commitment provides the basis for us to engage with the religious other. The third is interconnection, that we have to realize that all the religions have a common object of focus or study, because all religious traditions are dealing with an ultimate reality that we generally call God or Allah or other names for God that exist around the world. And with the profound existential questions, why was I born? What am I doing here on this earth? What is my life for? How do I use my life? Is there life beyond death? So these are the very profound questions that religion is dealing with, and this provides the interconnection between the different faith traditions that we are engaged with in interfaith engagement. My country, your country, are really multi-faith societies. And so it's very important that we have the fourth condition, empathy. Empathy for the religious other. In other words, that in our concepts and in our experience in our hearts, that we reach out to the religious other, and we have to use our own imagination to be stretched beyond the categories, the understandings of my own, for example, Catholic tradition. So we're resonating with the engaged other, whether the other is Muslim or Buddhist or Hindu or whatever. And this provides and to look at and try and understand. Lastly, and this is really the most important, and that is hospitality through the truth. That we must be receptive to the process that recognizes truth in another religious tradition and accepts the possibility, the ability to integrate that truth into one's own religious tradition, to understand it. And so that's when we go back to that epistemic humility, that may provide a possibility of change in our own religious tradition or in understanding our own religious tradition in greater depth. And allied to that, of course, is the fact that within the world, there are bad religions and bad religious practices. We see that in religiously inspired terrorism. And I can talk about the Australian terrorist who went to New Zealand and killed over 50 Muslims in the two mosques in Christchurch. His mind was so screwed up from social media. It's very important in this case that social media had screwed up his mind, and he chose Christchurch as the place where he would attack Muslims. So that is why religious leaders, moderate religious leaders, must speak out against these extreme religious practices. Now, let us come to the concept of human fraternity. Over the last 3-4 days, I have been in Solo attending the 8th World Peace Congress that was organized by Muhammadiyah, particularly by Professor Din Syamsuddin. And we discussed the notion of human fraternity and also the notion of middle path Islam. Now, it's not for me to talk about middle path Islam, except to say that Professor Din Syamsuddin is pushing this in Indonesia to resist extremism within the Indonesian nation. Now, the Human Fraternity Declaration comes from the famous meeting in February 2019, almost 4 years ago, when Pope Francis, the world's most important Christian leader, flew from Rome to Abu Dhabi as the head of the 1.3 million Catholics. And he had a 2-day meeting with Ahmad al-Tayyib, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar. And they've met 2 or 3 times since then. And so this is a very positive development. And together the Pope and the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar produced a document called On Human Fraternity for World Peace and Living Together, safeguarding creation and supporting all persons, especially the poorest and those most in need. Fraternity includes sisterhood and brotherhood, women and men cooperating together in equal dignity. This is what the document was emphasizing. It begins in the name of God, who has created all human beings equal in rights, duties, and dignities, and who has called them to live together as brothers and sisters, to fill the earth and make known the values of goodness, love, and peace. And so it speaks about how this peace, a fraternity, has been torn apart by policies of extremism and division, by systems of unrestrained profit, and by hateful ideological tendencies that manipulate the actions and futures of men and women around the world. They condemned that the modern world has a desensitized human consciousness, a distancing from religious values, and a prevailing individualism. So it condemns religious extremism, national extremism, and intolerance, as well as noting these 2 famous religious leaders that there are signs that a 3rd World War is being fought, has appeared. So it calls upon all to stop using religions to incite hatred, violence, extremism, and blind fanaticism. It calls for justice, as well as the right of women to education and employment. And it particularly singled out the accumulation of incorrect interpretations of religious texts, the importance of the correct interpretations of religious texts. Several weeks ago, certainly in Australia, we commemorated the 88 Australians who were killed during the Bali bombings, which happened just over 20 years ago. The most of any nation of the 212 that were killed. And Australia has grieved for what had happened there in Bali. But I think it's an example of reconciliation that Australians are still holidaying in Bali. So there's been a real reconciliation between our two nations. And also that Indonesia has entered into a relationship of fraternity with Timor-Leste. And I hope that that relationship continues, because Timor-Leste, I was there in September, have established a center for human fraternity, and they have also signed 6 religious leaders, Catholic, Protestant, and Muslim. They've signed the Interreligious Pact of Friendship. So that's, I think, have been very positive developments, even though we know that there have been a lot of negative elements around the world in the various places of war, whether it's Ukraine, Yemen, or whatever. Now, I would like to pass on to the notion of positive peace. Now, you may have heard of the Global Peace Index, which is produced each year, and the Positive Peace Index. And that has been established by the Institute for Economics and Peace in Sydney. And it is a very sophisticated way of assessing the peace in every country in the world that has more than 1 million people, and it uses various indices from the particular country to establish the index for each country. Out of that work, using mathematical formula, they have devised the construct, the concept of positive peace. And I think this is a very important concept, and the Institute for Economics and Peace now holds workshops around the world, instructing and teaching people about the 8 pillars of positive peace. Those 8 pillars are a well-functioning government, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high levels of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low levels of corruption, and sound, healthy business environment. All right, let's go back and let us go through each of these. During those workshops, which they are happy to hold in any country, in any city, and even outside cities, not only do they teach about the 8 pillars, but they work on with the participants from the country, Indonesia, India, Vietnam, whatever, to devise programs, projects, which they fund. The Institute of Economics and Peace is led by a man called Steve Killerley, and he is a Buddhist. He is an extremely rich man. He's made his money from an algorithm that he devised for use by the world's largest companies. He has what is called the Charitable Foundation. And I suggest to you that you look at both at the website of the Institute for Peace, for Economics and Peace, and at the website of the Charitable Foundation. All right, let us now look at the first, well-functioning government. Governance is important for any nation, and no nation state can succeed with a poorly functioning government system. And a well-functioning government delivers high-quality public and civil services, such as in schooling education, in university, and other kinds of education at the adult level. It delivers and generates trust and participation among its citizens. The trust that builds up between a government and its people. So that's very important. It upholds the rule of law and its actual keeping, which in turn leads to political stability because it's based on a just judiciary, judges who deliver objective decisions in the courts that are based on true justice and the civil and criminal justice law. The second pillar is the equitable distribution of resources. Peaceful nations try and basically succeed in ensuring that their citizens have broad access to resources such as education and health, as well as, although this happens to a lesser extent, better income distribution right across the society, that there is not a big gap between the richest and the poorest in a particular nation. And that within a particular nation, there is social mobility, or that's the word for being able to move up the social ladder through your hard work, through your knowledge, through your skills. So that leads to the equitable distribution of resources. So that's important. Thirdly, the free flow of information. The role of the media is critical in any nation. A free and independent media which disseminates, gives out information in a way that leads to greater openness and helps individuals and the society to address issues as they arise. And we've had a superb example in the COVID pandemic. In my nation, and I think in yours, the government ordered a lockdown, which included locking down churches, mosques, temples, gurdwaras, and so on. And in my country, when funerals were held, only 10 people were allowed to attend the funeral. And if there was a wedding, only 10. So the free flow of information, so as people and the government can work productively together. So the importance of a free and independent media. And also here we raise the issue of social media and its tendency to disseminate fake news, false information, false understandings. And that's an issue that all countries are going to have to address in a better way than they do now. All right, now, good relations with neighbors. Peaceful relations with other countries are as important as good, peaceful relations between groups within a country. Excuse me. Countries with positive external relations tend to be more peaceful and politically stable, are regionally integrated, and Indonesia is integrated in ASEAN. Australia is not part of ASEAN, but it is an observer because we are in the South Pacific and we relate to the Asian world, which holds more than half of humanity. So dealing with low-level interfaith conflict. As an example, I'll talk about an example that we have at the moment in our own country of Australia, where there's a bit of tension growing between Hindu groups and Muslim groups because of the export by Narendra Modi as the Prime Minister of India of his Hindu ethno-nationalism into the Hindu diaspora, into the Hindu communities in Australia. It hasn't led to violence yet, but there is some tension in that relationship. And so the police came to me several months ago and spoke to me about this, and I was surprised because I'd heard about it, but I hadn't thought that the police had also noted the same thing. So we'll deal with that within the framework of multicultural Australia. Okay, 5 levels of human capital. Human capital refers to a country's commitment to education and skills, to lifelong education and skills. We all left university years ago Then much later on, I got a job in a university. But and the students that are watching this webinar will eventually leave Tamansiswa University and take their place in the world. But education is a lifelong process. I have not stopped learning. And so the education and skills to promote knowledge and research so as to improve the economic productivity of a nation and to increase the social capital or the social wealth of a nation. And you can see on the slide to the right, human capital, knowledge, creativity, wisdom, judgment, experience, and so on. Okay, so that's the high levels of human capital, with education as the fundamental building block and the fundamental role of the university in every country. The next is acceptance of the rights of others. The observance of the fundamental rights of all others is another pillar of positive peace, based on laws that guarantee basic human rights and freedoms and respect and tolerance between the different ethnic, linguistic, religious, socio-economic groups within the country, together with gender equality, acceptance of different sexual orientations, and of workers' rights, their right to fair pay, their right to strike, and so on. So fundamental in the concept of positive peace is accepting the rights of others. Number 7, the next one, low levels of corruption. Low levels of corruption normally enhance or build up confidence and trust in situations such as in the public service, the police force, the judges, the judiciary system, the banking system, and so on. Whereas in countries that have high corruption levels, resources are inefficiently or not well allocated. So that leads to a lack of funding for essential services, perhaps in parts of the country, perhaps in all of the country, in things like health and education. Because if there's a lot of corruption, this can lead to civil unrest and more violence. So that's the notion of low levels of corruption. And lastly, a sound or healthy business environment, the last of the 8 pillars. So it depends on the strength of the economic conditions and the underpinning formal institutions. It might be banking, but it also is in the regulation of banks, in how they operate, and do they operate fairly for people, and in other economic institutions like superannuation, where workers put away money each payday and build up money for their retirement. And finally, business competitiveness and economic productivity are associated with the most peaceful countries. All right, I'd like to end up by saying 2 prayers for peace One is a Sufi prayer for peace, and the second prayer for peace will be a Christian Catholic prayer for peace. Send your peace, O Lord, who is perfect and everlasting, that our souls may radiate peace. Send your peace, O Lord, that we may think, act, and speak harmoniously. Send your peace, O Lord, that we may be contented and thankful for your bountiful gifts. Send your peace, O Lord, that amidst our worldly strife we may enjoy your bliss. Send your peace, O Lord, that we may endure all, tolerate all in the thought of your grace and mercy. Send your peace, O Lord, that our lives may become a divine vision, and in your light all darkness may vanish. Send your peace, O Lord, our Father and Mother, that we, your children on earth, may all unite in one family. Now, this is the St. Francis prayer of peace. Pope Francis has taken the name of Francis, who lived in the 1300s, and is very famous among Christians. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Well, thank you very much for listening to me. I hope that you have gained from my presentation, and I've opened up new avenues for you to explore in your spiritual and intellectual lives. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your explanation, and we feel like cool and then peace. And in this case, I think I do not need to conclude. In this case, at the beginning, Prof. Deskal mentioned about, let's say, the message of Hiroshima. And then the second one, he discussed religions for peace Asia, as well as the 5 conditions for interfaith engagement. And for the human fraternity, I think there are 5 altogether. The first one is epistemic humility. And then the second one is commitment, interconnection, empathy, as well as hospitality to truth. And regarding positive peace, I would like again to to highlight The first one is about well-functioning government. And in this case, I think I'm not saying that this is not our part, but this is more on the, let's say, government business. And then the second one, equitable distribution of resources. And then the third one is, I think this is an interesting one when COVID pandemic outbreaks hit as well as Indonesia, in which the information sometimes what we call by, I don't know how to pronounce, hook or hoax, mean hoax. Hoax, you know, the terminology of hoax means wrong information. Okay.
Fake information. Yeah, okay.
That is for the free flow of information. So social media in this case takes a very important role. And then number 4 is good relations with neighbors and high levels of human capital. And I think also this one deals with us in universities, and also how we develop ourselves, our skills, our let's say 21st century skills, our capacity to be, let's say, to develop. And then number 6, acceptance of the rights of others. So it is like, you know, setting the right of other people. And then number 8 is a sound business environment. And that is also, I think, a very good prayers. Yeah, in this case, I feel like I'm also what is in the prayers. Well, everyone, that is what already Prof. Deskal discussed. And then I would like to invite the questions. Please, if you are, yes. If you got something to ask, and I think I have a look on, okay, one person in this case is Pak Iswadi. Pak Iswadi, can you listen to me?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Can you please camera on so we can see you, Pak Is?
I'm so sorry because my camera has a problem.
Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. Can you please propose the question to Des, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I have 2 questions for Professor. The first question is, what is the negative and positive effect of social media for creating the tolerance between religion in the world? And the second question is, why there is terrorism in the world? Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. That is a very brief one. Pais is also one of Dewantara Muda. Am I right, Pais? Yes? I guess so. Okay, thank you anyway. There are 2 questions in this case. The first one is, what is the negative and the positive of, let's say, tolerance of religions? And then the second one, if I'm not mistaken, it is about why there is terrorism in this world. Okay.
All right, I'll respond to that. I don't like the word tolerance. And there's many, many, many other people like me who don't like the word tolerance. Rather, we would use the word acceptance. Because a proper attitude, a proper religious attitude, is not to tolerate others, but to accept them. They may be very different to us, and they may disagree with us on many issues. but we should still accept the other and not merely tolerate them. That may be a hard thing to say, but I'm very positive about this thought. And there's many critics of the concept of tolerance, and certainly in interfaith engagement, in interfaith dialogue. I don't tolerate my Muslim brother or sister, or my Hindu brother and sister, or my Buddhist brother and sister. I accept them with their different way of thinking, their different view of the religious world, the existential questions, and so on. And I think that's a very important point, and that's why I outlined the 5 conditions for interfaith engagement or intercultural engagement between different ethnic communities, between different cultural communities. That's an issue in Australia, but we have various bodies, multicultural government bodies that facilitate that interaction between the various ethnic, immigrant, refugee communities that we have in Australia. So I hope that kind of answers that, and you raise a very important point. So I hope that I've responded in an appropriate way. Your second question about religious terrorism and so on, what brings that about? Well, usually underlying it is a mistaken religious or philosophical or social ideology that may be based on a false interpretation of the religious scriptures, or it may be based on ideas such as the Great Replacement theory in Europe. This comes out, he's still alive, a French thinker, right-wing French thinker, and he believes that Muslims are moving into Europe and they're taking over Europe because they have many more children than Europeans, and that the European cultures are in danger of dying out and becoming Islamic. Now, this is a nonsense. It's rubbish. Sure, the Islamic birth rate has been high, but it's now just above the European rate, and so on. So that Great Replacement theory influenced particularly Brenton Tarrant, the Australian terrorist who shot all those Muslim worshippers in the 2 mosques in Christchurch. And it also influenced the behavior of Anton Breivik, who committed that massacre in Norway quite a few years ago. He was deeply influenced by that, and he comes out of a more Christian background than Tarrant, but that was at the basis of even though he didn't shoot Muslims, he was trying to gain attention to religious parties across Europe. As to the future danger, as he saw it. Okay.
All right, thank you for the response. Again, I think something that we need to highlight in this case is on the 5 interfaith engagement, like the one I already also mentioned as the conclusion. Now, I think we are moving on the second person who is asking. In this case is Mas Bonnie. Are you there? Can you unmute yourself, please? Mas Bonnie Fasius Amadoran, please. Hello, brother. Okay, while waiting for Mas Bonnie, I think I would like to. All right. Operator, can you please unmute? It's already on, so you can say no. Yes, please. Mas Bonnie?
I have the question.
Can you please louder, please? Speak louder.
Sorry. Is it already? Or...
No, I still could not listen to you.
Hello?
Oh, without headset.
Oh,
Have
okay.
a try, please.
Hello?
Check, check.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, okay.
Okay. Thank you. Professor Deskal, I have one question for you. I believe that human fraternity and positive peace come from or based on Bibles, no? Or our faith. Many values we can got from that, and then values become part of our life. In the practice level, sometimes our own values fetch on the other values. It can be interrelated, but it also uninterrelated. So I want to ask you your opinion that how can we do if the values can uninterrelated anymore? Thank you, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Mas Bonnie. The question, I think, straight away coming to what shall we do?
Yes.
If, let's say, thank you, if the values are, for example, or is uninterrelated. So, you know, the values sometimes interrelated and some also uninterrelated, unrelated, let's say. Yeah, unrelated, related and unrelated. So what shall we do in this case? Please.
Brother Fasius, could you give an example of this, what you want to say about values? Could you give a practical example?
For example, is the love your neighbor. I like that. But the neighbor here is different meaning. What the meaning is of neighbor? Is the same religion or another religion also? That's one. I mean that sometimes we use the termination is different meaning, different what's one, because they come from the our Bibles, no? I mean that our faith, and then we receive from the values or the meaning of the values from the others. I mean that the leaders. That's that. I think that's the problematic is that using the term. That's Professor.
Is that all, Mas Bonnie?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so the example is about value. One of them is about, let's say, love your neighbor. And neighbor here, is it talking about, let's say, the religion, or is it about really talking about, let's say, really our neighbor beside our house, for example? So
No, not mean like this. I mean that the concept of the neighbor in Christian, from the Christian is love your neighbor is the love others. But another meaning from the term is love your neighbor is the same religion. It is I mean the term meaning.
Okay.
All right, I can answer that question. Love your neighbor. When Jesus spoke about that, he gave a story about helping a Samaritan, not a Jew. And Samaritans at that time in Palestine were different in religion and certainly ethnicity. So Jesus's message was, your neighbor is everyone, in fact. Your neighbor is everyone. You just can't choose which neighbors you are to love. No, we should try and love all our neighbors. And then Jesus further emphasized that when he said, love your enemies as well, which at times may be hard, but that was the message that Jesus gave us. But to your fundamental point and the example you're giving, the neighbor is not confined to someone who lives next door to you or someone at your work or whatever. It goes beyond that and really incorporates everyone. It's a universal love. And you know, I see that in Islam as well, the authentic Islam. And so I just want to go back to that question beforehand when I was talking about the great replacement theory and say further, racism, that there are many ideologies that have racist undertones and anti-religious undertones, and none clearer than Islamophobia. This is a serious issue, as you yourselves in many cases are victims. In Australia, yes, fortunately, it has decreased very significantly, but about 10% of the Australian population would be described as Islamophobes. And that's mostly driven by what's happened in the past 20, 30 years, 9/11, Bali bombings and so on. That can't be denied. But it's, as I said, 10% according to a very good study, recent study that's been done. And allied to this fact is another one, another study that's been done recently across the world. How many people in a society believe that religion is the cause of conflict, violence, and war? Now, in my own country, 62% of people believe that. It's the second highest in the world after Belgium. And that's a difficult thing for religious leaders to combat because of bad religion, bad religious practices. And that is why over the last few days at the 8th World Peace Forum, Professor Din Sudin has been pushing the idea of middle path Islam. to resist extremist views, to resist views such as we must always oppose other religions. That is not an authentic Islam. And he spoke at length, and so did other Muslim scholars who were at the forum, particularly the Mustafa Cherik, who is the past mufti of Bosnia-Herzegovina, who's a brilliant speaker, and who has a very nuanced, complex view of Islam and its history, and of the West as well. We also had the Mufti of Moscow, who was arguing for a middle path Islam. So just to add further to that second question that was asked.
Okay, thank you very much. So again, Mas Boni, when it is talking about, let's say, neighbor in this case, it doesn't mean like lexical meaning from the dictionary. So this one is beyond. I mean, though Des already also mentioned that though it's enemy, and then it's again difficult for us, you know, to love. But then, let's say our religion also says that, well, we need to share, let's say, love. And Prof. Des, I would like to say a little bit in Bahasa about the interfaith, begitu. The interfaith engagement, Bapak Ibu, ada 5 pilar yang kita harus cermati gitu, dan lebih kepada apa, nilai atau value. Yang pertama adalah terkait dengan epistemic humility. Epistemic humility ini sebuah proses begitu, di mana pengenalan atau kemungkinan perubahan dari seseorang terhadap pemahaman, katakan spiritualnya, itu yang pertama. Lalu yang kedua itu terkait dengan komitmen. I think commitment also in apa ya, in bahasa juga sama begitu, bagaimana komitmen kita terhadap apa, rasa hormat, rasa hormat kepada sesama, katakan pemeluk agama atau keyakinan. Lalu yang ketiga adalah interconnection. Interconnection di sini Des menggarisbawahi apa yang didefinisikan oleh Cornel dalam bukunya 2013 begitu, bahwa interconnection adalah apa namanya? Interconnection adalah apa sih, connected, perpaduan atau interkoneksi begitu, padahal ya hubungan, let's say pada religious tradition begitu. Dan yang keempat itu empathy. Empathy is the empathy is like how we, let's say, aware atau bagaimana kita care begitu ya. Yes, care untuk atau sesama, katakan sesama makhluk hidup. I mean not only in this case for human. And then the fifth one is the hospitality to truth. Artinya memang hospitality itu, keramah tamahan itu memang ya sekali lagi untuk kebaikan. Secara singkat demikian Bapak Ibu, teman-teman semua, about the 5 pillars of interfaith engagement. Now I think I would like to, again, we still have about more or less 15 minutes to finish our session, everyone. And then now I invite Mas Edwin. You raise your hand, and then can you please check your sound? Can you? Or the operator, can you unmute Mas Edwin Sidik? Operator, check.
Check.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Check.
Yes. Hello.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone.
We can hear you.
Hello.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity. My lecture and my friends in the university and the honorable Professor Deskal. Let me stick to the question. How do we define, in seeking the highest value of fraternity, we use value of every religion. That's why there is a term of coexist. So how do we define the term of coexist if there is some practice that one religion feels feel angry by some the tradition of one religion. For example, there is no genocide in India, genocide of Muslim in Indonesia. If people in India accept the practice of what Muslim doing, such as kurban, maybe. So how do we define the coexist? Does it drag us into the pluralism? Maybe that's also. I would like to see the further thought or the answer. Thank you all, and thank you, the operator.
Thank you, Mas Edwin. This is a very good question. I mean, it's like, for example, Mas Edwin proposed the example of Idul Kurban. Idul Kurban. Slaughter of cows, and then cows for Indian. It's like a holy, let's say, animal. So, what do you think of this? Thank you.
Okay. I think in such situations like that, you've got to look at the role of the government. And because there will be clashes in understandings, and the example you bring up about the cow, slaughtering of cows and so on, by Muslims in a halal way. Governments, in my view, we have not as yet, in my view, studied enough the governance of religion and religious diversity. Everyone talks about freedom of religion, and that's fine. It's an important freedom. But it's also a relative freedom. It is not an absolute freedom. And therefore, the government, during the pandemic, intervened and closed down mosques and churches and so on, because if freedom of religion is an absolute value, then it couldn't have done that or shouldn't have done that. But it's a relative one. And so the role of a government with regard to the governance of religion is firstly to facilitate religious practice, to facilitate religious practice in the best way it can, to allow people to practice their faiths in all their variety, and to support religion as best it can. And an example that jumps into my mind is that in Australia, in my own country, there are now 49 Islamic schools. The first one opened in 1983, so it's been quite a quick growth. And they now educate 43,000 Muslim students in Australia. Now, the government gives money to those Muslim schools, as it does to all government and religious schools. Okay, so it seems to me that the government is facilitating the practice of religion. Second thing is that the government has to broker religious interrelationships, and you've just given a good example through dialogue, through negotiation. And you give the example from India, and really the government there, and it's not doing it, and the situation in India is getting worse from the information that I got during the World Peace Forum from an expert who lives in Delhi, an Indian Gandhi scholar. He was very insistent that there's a lot going on there that the outside world doesn't know about. So the whole thing about the cow has to be solved through dialogue and negotiation. I'll give you an example. Recently in Australia, we've had a controversy about the Nazi icon from World War II, where the Nazi icon is condemned by Jewish people because they see it as a symbol of the Holocaust, the killing of 6 million Jews. Whereas to Hindus, the swastika is a sacred symbol. They call it the holy swastika. So there's now been an agreement facilitated by a number of state governments that under the racial and religious discrimination bill, the use of the Nazi swastika is not allowed in deference to Jewish thinking and emotions. Whereas the Hindu sacred swastika can be used. So that was achieved through negotiation between the religious groups, and so that was done. The third thing that I talk about when we're talking about governance is the government can monitor what religious groups are doing because of the danger of bad religion and bad religious practices. And the fourth one is the protective role of the government, that the government is protective of religious groups when there are issues. Now, whenever there's a terrorist attack somewhere in the world, our police in Australia watch over mosques, just as they do with Jewish synagogues, which are often defaced with the Nazi swastika and so on. So that's the protective role of the government in the governance of religion and religious diversity. So I'm not sure whether that answers your question, but that would be my way of dealing with that in a civil, religiously positive, religiously productive way, within the parameters of interfaith dialogue and engagement.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Deska. You already respond to Mas Edwin questions. Jadi, let's say peranan dari pemerintah khususnya yang tentang world peace, if you still remember, Mas Edwin dan juga teman-teman, positive peace begitu. Yang pertama adalah terkait dengan aspek functioning government. So well-functioning government here, this means like peranan pemerintah juga begitu untuk menjembatani dialog dan juga negosiasi, let's say antar umat beragama ini, dan tidak lupa juga untuk selalu memonitor begitu, memonitor kegiatan yang dilaksanakan oleh let's say religious practices seperti itu. Jadi memang harus ada yang tadi disebutkan protective role begitu. Thank you Mas Edwin, pertanyaannya menggelitik begitu ya. Thank you very much. And then do you still have questions? Okay. I think we have the last one, the questions from Bapak Imam Ghazali, please.
Okay, can you hear my voice?
Yep.
Thank you. Prof. Deska. This is not a question, but it might be a reaction to your speech.
Sure.
When I'm attending your speech carefully, I believe that one of the key issues of peacekeeping or avoiding conflict here is the quality of the human resources, as well as the point that you have discussed that the more knowledgeable he or she is, and then he will be able to create a peace, or to be a peacekeeper, or the avoidance of the conflicts of that. And that's one. And then therefore it goes to my second point, is that a proposal for USD that I think we could bring this topic, or this topic for today's speech. And then since every graduations we are sending back about 1,000 graduates from USD to their hometown, which may be spread to the 32 provinces, regencies in Indonesia. And we do hope that these graduates will become like the local peacekeepers in their own environment, and then at least to avoid conflicts will be contributing to the peacekeeper over there. And by maybe paraphrasing the speech, so that this is suitable to the new graduates, so that when they go home, and then they will also spreading this kind of belief, so that in stages that our missions of the institutions to have create komunitas yang salam dan bahagia, will be also materialized. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much for your comments. I've been speaking for too long. I was very pleased to hear that Tamansiswa University has a unit called multiculturalism that every student does. I don't know what is the content of that curriculum. I would like to see it, but I would hope that it would contain some of what I've been talking about this morning, because I think students and graduates are agents for change, because hopefully within the particular university, whether it's in Australia or Indonesia or wherever, they should have been taught with the latest up-to-date information about their own profession, but they also, every university has a responsibility to produce good, productive, contributing citizens, and young people, I think, are conscious of their role in society, and we hope that they can take back the kinds of positive messages that I've been talking about within their own religious tradition, in their interaction with other religious, ethnic, linguistic groups. And that's why I think that's part of building up the social capital of a nation. Social capital is a very important concept, and social wealth is another phrase that's used. But it's the university has not only to build up sort of the professional specialization, whether it's in engineering or agriculture or whatever it might be, but there's the broader scope of the students being more positive, productive as citizens, and the responsibility they have for the well-being of their nation and of the world. Because, you know, with things like climate change in particular, it's very clear that our students should be pushing for their governments to change one, and then perhaps in their professional life, implementing the various measures like green cities, blue cities, and so on. One of the criticisms I made of the World Peace Forum was that it did not consider a basic fact that we are now in, and that is that since 2007, more than half of humanity live in cities, not in rural areas. And according to the United Nations estimations, by 2050, when these students will still be alive, we may not, but they will be, that 68% of the world's population will live in cities. Now that brings up another issue of mega cities. And that is a particular Asian problem, because in the world there are 48 mega cities. That's cities with more than 10 million people. Of those 48, 29 are in Asia, including Jakarta. In the top 10, China and Japan have 2 each, so that's 4 out of the top 10. So it's an issue that needs to be addressed, and the role of political leaders and religious leaders in that to make their cities more green with growth of plants and so on, and blue cities in the way that they look after water, getting pure water and so on for the cities, and how they handle that problem. Ensuring that there is sufficient water, which is a particular problem for Australia as a very dry continent. And we'll have to do more work in that area. So, yeah, that's my response to that. Believe in your students and ensure that in the curriculum that they are trained to be good citizens and are well aware of the various problems that mankind and womankind are facing. And if they're engineers, for example, they can solar panels, wind turbines, all that kind of thing. All right. So, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I think it's already 1 minute past 12. So thank you, Prof. Des, to inspire us. And I think this is really connected with the vision of UST begitu. Visi UST ini sangat berhubungan dengan topik apa yang kita bicarakan hari ini, that is about characters begitu. Dan seperti juga di tertulis visi UST itu unggul begitu dalam mencerdaskan kehidupan bangsa di Asia Tenggara, unggul dan berkarakter dalam memuliakan dan mencerdaskan kehidupan bangsa di tahun 2025. Dan tahun 2025 sudah sangat dekat. Mudah-mudahan apa yang kita bahas hari ini itu akan menambah kita menjadi katakan sosok yang tadi Pak Warek Satu menyampaikan high quality begitu. High quality dan tentang positive peace di sini dikatakan high levels of human capital, dan education ini sangat memegang peranan penting. Sebelum saya kembalikan kepada Pak Nanang sebagai MC, terima kasih sekali lagi, terima kasih Dev for your time, dan juga kepada Bapak Ibu pimpinan, Bapak Rektor, Bapak Ibu Wakil Rektor, dan juga Prof. Sutrisna Wibawa. Thank you very much for this opportunity, dan juga BKUI yang dikepalai oleh Pak Nanang Bagus Subekti. Again, thank you very much everyone, dan terima kasih juga terhingga ini hari Minggu. Kami tahu ini hari Minggu, tetapi semangat untuk belajar bersama. We learn a lot, I think, from this insight about interfaith and also positive peace. Mudah-mudahan pertemuan hari ini juga bisa membawa keberkahan begitu bagi kita semua. Sekali lagi terima kasih teman-teman yang telah hadir dari jam 10 begitu hingga saat ini, yang begitu semangat. Sehat selalu, dan mohon maaf atas segala kekurangan, khususnya saya dalam memandu atau memoderatori acara ini. Terima kasih. Saya kembalikan ke Pak Nanang. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Terima kasih banyak Bu Yuyun dan Prof. Des. Bapak Ibu semuanya, sebelum kita akhiri perjumpaan kita siang hari ini, mohon untuk mengisi presensi kehadiran yang sudah di-share linknya ada di kolom chat sebelum nanti kita tutup chat ini, dan pastikan memasukkan email yang betul karena sertifikat otomatis langsung terkirim di email Bapak dan Ibu semuanya. Mohon berkenan untuk cek kembali emailnya. Nanti kita akan memastikan Bapak Ibu sebelum kita tutup ya Bu Yun, Zoom meeting ini Bapak Ibu sudah klik link tersebut dan melengkapinya. Well, Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've learned a lot today.
Pak Nanang, sorry to interrupt. I think now the time for Bapak Warek 1 ini ada bingkisan khususnya dari UST begitu, khusus dari Lembaga Pengembangan Universitas. Kembali lagi, thank you Prof. Tris. Silakan Pak Warek diberikan kepada Des, and I think you please you open it. Ya. Nah, maaf sebentar ya Pak Nanang ya.
Silakan ini Bu, sambil menunggu teman-teman mengeklik presensi kehadiran.
Tidak
apa-apa.
Silakan Pak Imam diberikan, I think, and yeah, both of them, you show it please. Ini gimana nih?
Virtual aja.
Oke, virtual saja ya.
Dikirim ke hotel.
Oke.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and I'll give back to you.
Thank you very much, Bu Yuyun dan Pak Imam. Bapak dan Ibu, sebelum kita akhiri, can you please switch on your camera? We need to take screenshots for our today's event. Mohon untuk diaktifkan kameranya, kita ambil, we are taking screenshots. We have 10 screens, so perhaps it's taking a while. I'm taking from screen 1. Screen 1. Screen 2. Screen 3. Screen 4. Screen 5. Six. Seven. Eight. Last screen 9. Bapak dan Ibu semuanya, kita sampai di penghujung acara kita. Sekali lagi terima kasih Profesor Deskal. Thank you very much Profesor Deskal for the information and knowledge which have been given to us, may be useful for us. Very thought-provoking and insightful presentations indeed, and your thoughts are going to stay with us, with all of us. Bapak dan Ibu, kita akan mengakhiri pertemuan kita siang hari ini. Jika ada banyak hal yang kurang berkenan dalam kami, seluruh panitia, membawakan acara atau mempersiapkan acara kami hari ini, kami mohon maaf yang sebesar-besarnya. If in guiding this event, we made mistakes or offend somewhere here, please forgive us. And sorry for the inconvenience earlier in the beginning of this program. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's close this event with a prayer. Mari kita tutup dengan berdoa. Berdoa kita mulai. Amin. Thank you very much, Bapak dan Ibu semuanya. Terima kasih banyak. Kita ketemu lagi di perjumpaan berikutnya. Thank you very much, Bapak dan Ibu. See you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Bapak. Thank you so much. Love you all.
Thank you, Bapak Ibu semuanya. Make sure check your email because the certificate is sent by system automatically to your email address. Make sure you type a correct email address so you will get your certificate of participation straight away. Prof. Des, thank you very much, Prof. Bu Nani, terima kasih banyak.
Yes.
Pak Imam, Bu Yuyun.
Yeah.
Saya kembalikan ke host, Mas Mosi.
I don't use this kind of computer.
Use this one. This is not a touch screen.
No.
Yeah, not touch screen. So.
Oh, we lost you.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Ya, Mas Mosi. Ya, silahkan Mas Mosi. Thank you,
We'll
Mas
go
Mosi.
back to the top and can I read them?
What do you want to?